To make the short crust pastry for your lemon meringue pie, I have in my bowl 200 grams of normal plain flour, and then I've got 50 grams of butter and 50 grams of lard. If you want to, you can use all butter or all margarine to make your short crust pastry, but I prefer mine made with either some lard or some white vegetable fat. This needs to be rubbed in with your fingertips until it looks like breadcrumbs. And it's important that you only use your fingertips, not the palms of your hands, as the palms of your hands are hotter and you can end up with a really sticky mixture. So lift the mixture out of the bowl slightly as you start rubbing in. Let it fall down a little bit so that it can cool. And if you need to turn your bowl, do it from the inside of the bowl using the back of your hands, and that way you won't make a mess on the worktop. So keep rubbing with thumbs over fingertips until you've got this mixture looking like breadcrumbs. Be careful not to over rub, otherwise it will be difficult to get the water in and make your pastry. When you've rubbed your fat in so that it looks like breadcrumbs, you need to add your water, and it's 1 teaspoon of water for every 25 grams of flour. So as I've got 200 grams of flour, I need 8 teaspoons of water, which I know is the equivalent of 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons. So I'm just going to put the water in, and I like to start stirring this with a knife and just see if the mixture will go together to start with. You need to learn to use your own judgment on this, and after you've stirred it a little bit with a knife, you can put your hands in and see if the mixture is actually going to go together. And you need to squeeze through the pastry to make sure that it's not just wet on the outside or dry on the outside and wet in the middle, and that feels to me like it needs a little bit more water. So I'm just going to add 1 more teaspoon to help bring this dough together, and it should all come together into a dough in your bowl, and hopefully you'll be able to leave your bowl looking clean once you've got your pastry made. So there we go, all the pastry is in one ball. The dough looks reasonably clean, so I can move my bowl out of the way, put my dough on the worktop, and I'm just going to knead it very lightly and very quickly before I start to roll it out. And you can see, because it wasn't completely smooth having come out of the bowl, I have a few bits of flour on my worktop which I can just pick up into my ball of pastry and get that ready for rolling. So when I'm ready for rolling, flour your worktop. I'm going to make my lemon meringue pie 1 in a large tin and 1 in a small tin, because I want the small tin for presentation. So I'm going to take a little bit of pastry off to do the small tin, and I'm just going to do the large tin first to show you, because it's easier, I think, to show with a large piece of pastry. Pastry is quite delicate, and because I've got a round tin that I want to put it in, I'm just going to press this into a round to start with. And the best way to roll your pastry is to roll once away from you and give your pastry a quarter turn. So just roll once and then move your pastry on the worktop. And if you move it with your hand flat and just twist, you are much less likely to pick your pastry up and break it. And if you move it every time you have rolled it, you will not stick your pastry to the worktop. So as well as keeping the depth of your pastry nice and even, it won't stick to the worktop. If you notice that your pastry is starting to stick to your rolling pin, rather than drowning it in flour, if you have a bit of flour on your worktop, you can put a little bit on your hand and just rub it over the top of your pastry. If your pastry you think is coming out of a circle shape and not rolling the shape that you want it, you can reshape it with your hands before continuing. And although I have a few cracks around the edge, they're not massive cracks. If the cracks worry you, just pinch the edges together a little bit all the way round and reshape your pastry to a circle. Please don't pick your pastry up with 2 fingers and try and move it. Hold it up and wave it in the air, because the chances are you'll be left with 2 bits of pastry between your fingers and the rest of it on your worktop. The last thing to say about pastry, short crust in particular, is the first time you roll it is the best your pastry will be. So if you struggle to roll it while you're at school, I would ask for help. Do not be tempted to scrunch it up into a ball and roll again. And you can see, because I've turned this every time I've rolled it, my pastry is not stuck to the worktop. To know how big to roll your pastry, put your tin on the top, and you need to have a good, in my case, 2 to 3 centimetres around the outside to know that it will go up the sides of the tin easily as well. So I just need this to be a little bit bigger, and again, it is just 1 roll and turn. Right, I think that pastry will fit in that tin just about. There is more than one way to lift your pastry in a tin. You can lift it in just with your fingers if you want to. So if you have your tin close, what you can do is slide your hands under the pastry, and then you spread your fingers to give as much support as possible, and you can lift your pastry up and put it on top of your tin. If the thought of doing that worries you, or if you think your pastry is cracked, an alternative way is to put your rolling pin in the centre of your pastry, fold your pastry over. You then move your tin to just behind your rolling pin, and you can pick up and allow your pastry to unroll that way. However you get your pastry in your tin, what's really important when you try to fit it is that you do not stretch it. So I'm just going to move mine over so it's a bit more even, which means you lift your pastry and you push it into the bottom of your tin. So hopefully here you can see that the pastry is stretched there and it's curved. If I were to just press this down, I'd make my pastry really thin. So I lift, push it into the edges of the tin, and you do that all the way round. It is lift and push your pastry to the sides of your tin. I've lined the small tin in exactly the same way, and I'm just going to run my rolling pin over the top of these particular tins because I want to clear the excess pastry away from the edge. Some people like to leave all the excess pastry on and cook it with the excess pastry on and then trim that when they're done. But I prefer to have a really neat edge to my pastry, and I like to roll it all off before it goes into the oven. This pastry case needs to be baked blind, which means it's going to be baked without a filling in it. So using a fork, just gently prick the bottom and around the sides of your pastry, and I'm going to do that just a couple of times on the small one as well, and that just helps prevent any big air bubbles from forming in the bottom of the pastry, which you've then got to break. I'm using foil to then support the sides of the pastry before it goes into the oven to be baked blind. You need something to support the sides, because as soon as the pastry gets hot in the oven, the fat in it melts and the sides will collapse. So if you don't support the sides of your pastry, you'll have a really shallow dish to try and get your filling in. And I use foil at home because I don't have baking beans. If you have greaseproof paper and baking beans, that's fine, but both pastries are going to have their sides supported. They're going on a baking tray, and I'm going to give them 15 to 20 minutes to start off with, and then I'll have a look and check and see if the pastry is ready for the foil to come out. Okay, the pastry's been in the oven for 20 minutes, and I can see underneath the foil before I lifted it off that it's starting to go golden brown around the edges. And the same with the little one, it's golden brown around the edges. But when you touch them in the middle here, I can feel that they're just still a little bit soft. So I'm just going to pop them back in the oven for 5 more minutes without the foil in, and then the pastry cases will be cooked and finished, ready for the filling. While the pastry's cooking, you can start on the filling for your lemon meringue pie. So to make the filling for the lemon meringue pie, I've got 25 grams of butter and 50 grams of caster sugar. I have 2 lemons, which I've already washed and dried, 50 grams of corn flour and 3 eggs. And I'm going to start with the lemons. You need to grate the pith, the zest off your lemons on the smallest possible side of your grater. The zest is the part that actually has all the natural oils in. And when I am grating lemons, I just like to do it a few times in one place and then turn. If you go too deep with your lemon, you will actually go down. You'll not just take the zest off the lemon, which is the coloured outer part of the lemon and the bit that you want, but you'll also start to remove the pith, which is the white layer underneath. And the pith can be quite bitter. It will also go through, if you start going through the pith, you'll start getting through into the lemon itself, and it will make it quite difficult to squeeze the juice out later because your lemon will fall apart. What you have to do is just be patient, and as I say, just a couple of grates in any one side or any one place on your lemon until you have just lifted off the outer part of the skin. So if you look at both lemons together, you can see this one is slightly paler, but it is still yellow in colour, and I haven't broken through the skin to the pith at all. I'll do the second one in a moment. What you've got to ignore is the fact that you don't seem to have very much lemon zest come off. Quite a lot of the lemon zest will be inside the grater, so if you just use the back of a knife, you can get that out as well. So you have considerably more lemon zest there now. But what you also need to do is use the back of a knife and go along your grater. These bits that you've been grated on, these little indentations actually go in rows, and you can just go between them and then turn your grate around, go the other way, and you will find that again you get quite a bit more lemon zest come from your grater. And it's important to get as much of the lemon zest as possible, because that's what gives you the nice lemon flavour. The juice adds a very small amount of flavour, but actually mainly helps to make sure that your lemon meringue pie is not too sweet. So that is the amount of zest that I've got from one lemon, and I've got a second lemon to do, so I'm just going to do the second lemon quickly. Right, I've got the lemon zest of both my lemons, and I'm just going to put that into my saucepan so that it's out of the way, because that's going to go into the lemon filling right from the start. I need the juice from both my lemons as well, and I'm going to add the juice into the water that I've already measured out. So my 275 mils of water, I'm just going to add the lemon juice into that at the beginning, and then I know that I have all of the lemon in my lemon meringue pie, and I'm not going to forget to add any of the lemon later on. So that is one, and then the second lemon. If you don't have a lemon squeezer, you can use a fork to help you get all the juice out of the lemons, but if you've got a lemon squeezer, it is much easier. So, got the lemon juice in there with the lemons. Water. The next thing that I need to do is to separate my eggs. So, I've got 3 eggs. I'm going to need the yolks and the white, but as it's lemon meringue pie, you can't have any of the egg yolk in with your egg white, or you won't be able to whisk them. So there are various ways that you can separate your eggs. One of the ways that I like, for those people who are worried about it, is to crack your egg over a small plate. Hold your egg here, don't hold it up here, hold it quite close to the plate and break your egg, and then use an egg cup. And if you pick up the egg, the plate with the egg on, put the egg cup really close to the egg, move over to your bowl and tip. What you'll find is that the egg white has gone into the bowl, and in your cup you have a whole egg yolk. I'm just going to put the egg yolk on the plate with the butter, because they're going to be added to the meringue at the same time. If you don't want to do it that way, you can separate your eggs using the shell, and lots of people like to separate their egg using the shell. Again, I would do it over a plate, because if you break the egg yolk and it goes into your bowl, you're going to have to replace all of your eggs. So just tip the egg yolk from one shell to another, get all of the egg white onto the plate, there we go, and you have a second egg yolk there, and I can then add that egg white to the first one. The last way that some people like to do their eggs is to split the egg, but actually to catch it in their hand. So all of the egg goes into your hand. If you just separate your fingers a little bit and move the egg from one hand to the other, the egg white is all separate, the egg yolk goes onto a plate. So I have my 3 egg whites in a bowl, ready to make my meringue. I have my 3 egg yolks with the butter to be put into the lemon filling later. I've got lemon juice and water, my sugar, my corn flour and my lemon rind. So what I'm going to do now is put my corn flour into my saucepan, and it's quite a lot of corn flour. You need 50 grams of corn flour, which is more than you would use if you were going to make this much custard, but the lemon actually prevents the corn flour from setting and going as thick as the milk would in custard. So you need to mix this to a paste, and it's really important when you're using corn flour that you mix it to a paste. That's for the pastry. That you mix this to a paste with cold liquid. If you pour boiling liquid onto your corn flour, it will just form lumps because corn flour is pure starch. Doesn't take much liquid, and as long as your lemon juice and corn flour is smooth and you can't see any lumps in it, you can pour the rest of that in all in one go. You don't need to do it gradually. It's not like a roux sauce. Once it's blended or you've slaked it, then that's ready to go. This then just needs to be put onto a cooker. You need to heat that up until it's boiling. So it must boil or it's not going to be as thick as it would be. The key thing with a corn flour sauce, when it starts to thicken, it very often looks as if it is going to go lumpy. But you just need to keep stirring as it thickens and it won't go lumpy. So over a gentle heat, that just needs to be cooked until it's boiled. Right, I've been stirring this corn flour, lemon juice and water mixture all the time, and I can feel that it's coming up to the boil. You can probably see that it looks as if it's going lumpy. As I said, I'm going to keep stirring it. If you worry about the fact that you think it's going lumpy and stop stirring to ask for help or to say, "Miss, I think mine's going lumpy," the chances are yours will be lumpy. It is a very thick sauce when it's done, as you can see, but I just need it to boil. Corn flour is pure starch, and once it's boiled, that is as thick as it is going to be. And because it's so thick, it's really quite difficult to see when it is boiled. But you want something that looks that thick to start with, and I can see that boiling. Right, the pastry's had 15 minutes, and if I move the paper, you can see, hopefully, it's started to shrink around the edge of the dish, but it's not completely cooked. I can feel that the pastry is a little bit firmer at the top, and I can see where it isn't cooked in the middle. And if I look at the large one, it's the same thing. I can see that it is starting to cook, but it's not quite ready around the edge of the dishes. So I'm going to put the foil back in and give that another 5 minutes. Okay, this pastry has had another 5 minutes, and there's just the starting of it going brown around the outside, but you can see in the middle the pastry is still raw. So I'm going to take the foil out, pop that back in the oven for another 10 minutes until the pastry is completely cooked. So just put the time. So that's just going to cook now for the last 10 minutes. The lemon sauce, I've made my lemon sauce. As soon as it's done, you need to bring it back over, and off the heat, you need to put in your egg yolks and beat these in really fast. These help to give the lemon meringue sauce, the lemon sauce, the right colour, and you can see they're also thinning the sauce down a little bit. But I also want in here the butter and all of the rest of the egg yolk. You don't normally do this on the heat because if you're not stirring quickly enough, what you'll end up with is that the egg yolk will cook straight away and you'll have lumps of cooked egg yolk in your sauce, which is not what you want. The butter will help give it a creamier flavour. There we go. And you can see they've both thinned that sauce down a little bit from being incredibly thick on the cooker. It is now a little bit thinner. The sugar will help thin the sauce even more. So it's 50 grams of sugar that you have for your filling, and I'm just going to put roughly half of my sugar in first, and then I'm going to taste this filling. I don't like my lemon meringue to be too sweet. I quite like a sharp filling, so I've put in half of the sugar, and then I'm going to taste the filling and see if I think it needs the other half. To me, that's absolutely fine. I don't want to put the other half of the sugar in, so I'm just going to put this to one side. I've managed to get this completed before my pastry is done. So what I'm going to do is put a circle of greaseproof paper on the top of this so that it doesn't form a skin while I'm waiting just for my pastry to finish cooking, because I don't really want a skin on the top of the lemon sauce filling. Greaseproof paper is often used over the top of sauces if you've got to wait or leave them. All you need to do is just make sure that there is no air underneath, and that will prevent that getting a skin. It won't stop it thickening as it goes cool, but at least it won't have a skin on while I'm waiting for the pastry to finish. These have been in the oven for 20 minutes. I did look at them after 15, but I didn't think that they were ready. So this small one, you can see it's browning slightly around the edge, but in the middle it's still quite soft, and it's the same with the larger one. The very top is starting to brown, but the middle is still quite soft and raw. So I'm going to pop these back into the oven and let them finish cooking. And they will be another 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, the pastry is now cooked. It's a light golden brown, both cases, so I can put the lemon filling in, and I just need to get the, there we go, greaseproof paper off the top. This has set a little bit, but it doesn't have a skin on it, so I just want a spoonful in that case, and the rest of the mixture I'm just going to put in the large case. This is going to go back into the oven, so it will thin down a little bit more, and I'm just going to spread this up to the edges of the pastry case. So I just want this to be spread evenly in the pastry. It doesn't matter if the top of this is not smooth, because once the meringue is on, nobody is going to see what the top of the pastry case, what the top of your lemon filling looks like. What's important is that you have an even amount of lemon filling right across the pastry case. So once that's all in there, there we go, that's all of that. Then I can move this to one side whilst I make the meringue. So there we go. Lemon filling in. And it's time to make the meringue. So I have my 3 egg whites in a bowl, and I have 150 grams of caster sugar weighed out. We normally use 2 ounces or 50 grams of caster sugar for every egg white. So if this is a grease-free bowl, which I know it is, should be able to whisk the eggs without any problems. Once your eggs start to stand in peaks, it can be quite tempting to start putting the sugar in. But a common mistake that people make is to put too much sugar in too quickly before the egg whites are ready. If you tip your bowl and the egg whites still slide, they are not stiff enough yet for meringue, so you need to keep going just a little bit longer. The egg whites now to me look a little bit dry on the top. They're not moving in the bowl, and I'm sure you've seen it in Bake Off, but you should be able to turn your bowl upside down without the egg whites coming out. If you now add all of your sugar in one go, you're going to lose all of the air that you've whisked in. So you need to add roughly half of your sugar to start with. And the first half of sugar you can whisk in again. Because of the type of meringue that we're making, you then want to get rid of your electric mixer. But you can see this meringue is still going to hold in peaks. So it's still holding its shape. If you were to then whisk in the second half of your sugar, you lose that stiffness from the meringue. So the second half of your sugar, you just need to fold in with a large spoon. So just fold it in with a tablespoon, cutting through the middle until you are certain that all of the sugar has been incorporated into the meringue, and it won't take very long. If you're doing this for your exam, piping the meringue on top is a good idea. And same as we've said before, same as we've done before, if you can't hold your piping bag in your hand, put it into a measuring jug and get as much of your mixture in there as possible. Okay. I'm not going to be able to fit all of that in there if I fill it in this jug, and that is the biggest jug that I've got, so I'm going to add some more in a minute. Okay, so your meringue. The meringue needs to form a seal around the edge of your dish, so pipe around the edge of your dish first with your meringue. This is quite soft, this one. I'm not sure it's going to hold its shape. However, I am going to get blobs around the outside. That's not going to hold its shape very well at all, but it's going to be on there. I think, as that is so soft, what I might do is just spoon that on the top, starting around the outside, and peak this, because if it's not going to hold its shape properly, I would rather not have it piped on there. I would rather just shape it and make peaks in it in a minute. So this one on there, again just up to the edge of the dish. There we go. I'm I'm going to put all the rest of the meringue on here. And just spread that around. And then I'm just going to use the back of the spoon and just pick it up into peaks so that the top of the meringue is not flat. I don't want the meringue to be completely flat when it comes out of the oven. And where the peaks are, the meringue will brown more. So just the back of the spoon to give you an uneven surface to your meringue, and then into the oven. Okay, so I have the large lemon meringue pie which I cooked yesterday and the small one. And the small one, again, can come out of the dish, go onto a serving dish or plate. It's a good idea to take them out if you can, and the meringue is inside the pastry to make it easy to turn out. But then you've got your lemon meringue on a plate or a dish, and it looks nice and neat, and it is one portion. The large lemon meringue, these were cooked and finished yesterday. Again, as I said, you can serve a slice of your lemon meringue, and it is, if you've only got a large dish, it's what you would have to do. And I did get the meringue to brown. But when you cut into your meringue, this is quite a big slice, sometimes you lose either a little bit of the meringue, it crumbles, you can lose the edge of your pastry, and you can serve a single slice. The meringue has cracked a little bit where it's not come straight out of the oven. It's up to you which one you think looks better.